This is Talk Easy. I'm Sam Fragoso. Welcome to the show. Salman, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I feel like the only place to start, especially given what's happened in the last few years for you, is how are you doing?
I'm not so bad, you know.
You look sprightly.
I'm better than I should be, probably.
Yeah. You walked in here and I thought, I think he has more energy than I do.
It's a lie, but I pretend to. I think when you're young, you have to fake wisdom, and when you're old, you have to fake energy.
In your second year of reading history at Cambridge, in 1966, the year you first learned of the satanic verses, you had a professor by the name of Arthur Hibbert.
Yes.
Who said to you once, you must never write history until you can hear the people speak. Is the same true of the novel?
Yes, it's kind of the best advice I was ever given. Although I never became a historian, as it turned out, although it was my university subject. But I thought it applied very well to writing fiction. Because, and actually, even now, when I'm beginning to develop something, I ask myself, how do the people speak? You know, do they have a big vocabulary, or do they have a limited vocabulary? Do they use bad language? Do they speak quickly or slowly? You know, are they articulate or are they inarticulate? You know, there's a whole range of questions you can ask about how somebody speaks. What's their accent? Because you know, in the UK, accent very often reveals social class. In America, it very often reveals race or region. Just by making these choices, by the time you've made those choices, you really know who the character is.
So tell me, the people of the 11th Hour, when did you begin to hear them speak?
Well, the book's written over a period of time. I mean, the two short stories with which it begins and ends are older than the three long stories in the middle.
Right. So the first story, which is a prologue, appeared in the New Yorker in 2009. And the last story, a kind of epilogue, appeared, I think, at the end of 2020.
Well, I'll tell you about that first story. What happened is that I was in South India. I was in the city that I still call Madras, but is now officially called Chennai. And I met through friends this very charming old gentleman, you know, very old and very grumpy, but sort of deliciously grouchy. And I just kind of fell in love with him, but emphatic and
a little cantankerous,
very enjoyably cantankerous. And so what I did in the end, when I was thinking about this story, is that I sliced him in half. I just thought, let's have two of him, and let's have them really quarreling with each other all the time, but actually secretly in love with each other. And so it became one person that I met became two people that I wrote about.
You know, one of the book's recurring preoccupations, and it begins right here in the first story, is this idea of the shadow self. How would you describe what a shadow self is to people who are unfamiliar?
If you're at all in the public eye, there's usually a self that's created for you by the media, by public response, etc. And then there's a private self, which is very often not really like that. You know, I mean, I remember, Borges has this famous little text called Borges and I, in which he makes a distinction between the public and the private self. And a lot of writers have done that. You know, I remember I used to know quite well the German writer Günter Grass, and he said to me he often has the feeling that there was somebody called Gunther, who he knew and who was married to his wife and who was the father of his children and the friend of his friends. And then there was somebody called Grass, who was out there in the world making trouble. And he said, you know, sometimes I send Grass out there to make a noise so I can stay home and do my work.
And is that how you see yourself?
Well, certainly.
Who do you send out into the world?
Well, I'm trying not to anymore. But certainly what happened to me at the noisy part of my life, after the publication of the Satanic Verses.
What happened?
Just something noisy happened. But anyway, at that point, there were not just one, there were various versions of me being propagated by this or that interest group.
When that happened in 1989, Valentine's Day, there was this decree, and your friend, the late Martin Amis, famously said that you disappeared into the front page.
Yeah, vanished into the front page. Well, I've been spending a lot of my life since that day trying to get back onto the book pages, get off the front page. I think I made it. I think I had made it quite well until 3 years ago when this attack happened, and I was shoved back onto the front pages. But I hope for briefly, because one of the things I really hope that this book can do is to make people think about me as a writer again, and not as somebody in the news for being stabbed.
Well, let's talk about you as a writer, because in your last book, Knife, there is a reference to The Shadow by Hans Christian Andersen.
Yes.
And I wondered if that was, to bring it back to the page here, if that was on your mind in writing The 11th Hour.
That's all. Ever since I read that story a very long time ago, because people think of Hans Christian Andersen as a fable writer for younger readers, but there's some of his stuff which isn't at all for younger readers. It's quite dark, and I think this story, The Shadow, it's not at all a children's story. It's about a man whose shadow comes detached from him and leaves. The shadow leaves him and wanders off into the world. So the shadow leaves, and the shadowless man, finds a girl, he's getting married, etc. The shadow returns a year later, having traveled the world, become very cosmopolitan and sophisticated. And the woman decides that she prefers the shadow to the man. And actually they managed to arrange for the real man to be executed. And as he's waiting in his death cell, he can hear the wedding bells of his girlfriend, his lover, and the shadow. I just thought that's such an amazing story about how versions of yourself can succeed where you failed or fail where you succeeded.
And I think it's that text that inspires a page at the end of the prologue here from your new book, The 11th Hour. And I thought as we get started, we'd read from that a little bit.
Yes, well, this is where these two old gents who I told you I split one character into two.
The cantankerous, not so friendly boys.
The two cantankerous, they're called senior and junior because one is 17 days older than the other. They're both 81. And once a week they walk to the post office to cash their pension slips. And that's what they're doing. And they're very cantankerous about that because young people in the family say, well, we'll go get it for you. You don't have to go all that way. But they take pride in the fact that they take this weekly walk with their pension slips.
Even if it takes a little bit longer than it used to.
Even if it takes time. So, I mean, it's not very far, but it takes them a while, whereas a younger person would do it in 5 minutes. So, after that, a left turn, and then another 100 yards of walking. And then they would be at the post office. A 5-minute journey for the young, half an hour each way, minimum for the two old men. The sun was behind them, and both men, inching slowly forward, were looking down at their shadows, which lay side by side upon the dusty pavement. Like lovers, they both thought, but neither of them spoke, their habit of opposition being too ingrained to permit them to express so fond an idea. Afterwards, Senior regretted that he had not spoken. "He was my shadow," he said to the woman with the wooden leg. That's his wife. "And I am his. 2 shadows, each shadowing the other. To that we were reduced, that is so. The old move through the world of the young like shades, unseen, of no concern. But the shadows see each other and know who they are. so it was with us. We knew, let me say this, who we were. And now I am a shadow without a shadow to shadow. He who knew me knows nothing now, and therefore I am not known. What else, woman, is death? It's a kind of declaration of love. It's just that it's what he never felt able to say while the other was alive.
Mm.
And that's after the other one died, because he has a fall and dies. And it allows the older, 17 days older one who survived to express a kind of love that he's never expressed while they were both alive.
The old and the young, these various versions of you on the page, I don't know, they're reflected and refracted in so much of your writing, in which autobiography is often almost reconstituted as fairy tale.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to try to understand, to quote Midnight's Children, the pell-mell tumble of a brain in which everything ran into everything else. And to do that, I feel like we have to start in Bombay, back at Windsor Villa, right as the partition of British India begins in 1947. What does Lewis Carroll's Alice do for a young you?
As a young person, I was very early on addicted to books, and I was a very bookish kid. Unlike my sister, who was naughtier than me, had more fun. But I loved to read books. And now, retrospectively, it's interesting to see what books from the West, what children's books made it into Bombay and what didn't. So Alice showed up, but Winnie the Pooh really didn't. So there were these odd differences. I read Winnie the Pooh when I was grown up, much too old for it.
Do you think there was an expiration date on Winnie the Pooh?
Well, I'm very fond of Winnie the Pooh, but not in the same way as of Alice.
This is going to be the clip people take. They're going to be like, it's
Pooh Bear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's something about the way you're saying Winnie the Pooh as well.
Yeah. Well,
coming from you.
There's also, all those little verses. Halfway up the stairs is the step where I sit. There isn't another step quite like it.
There is going to be a Winnie the Pooh test at the end of this, so I'm glad it seems like you're going to pass it.
I actually, once, years ago, when I finished a book and got a deal for it, as a present to myself, I bought and I own an original Winnie the Pooh drawing. Here's Pooh Bear with a little jar of honey sitting on the branch of a tree with Piglet.
Okay.
What could be finer?
And so Alice?
Well, the thing I like about Alice is that she's very ornery. She's not actually a particularly sweet child. She's always telling people off. Yeah, she's in Wonderland. She doesn't know the rules of where she is. She doesn't even know what size she is. She's either too big for everybody or too small. And yet, she's constantly scolding people. And I thought, that's somebody who knows her mind.
And as a young boy, that appealed to you.
I
Why?
loved it. I thought she's so sure of herself. It was Alice's certainty. There was another set of children's books by a writer called, I don't know, he's very well known in America, Arthur Ransome, who wrote about children's books set in the Lake District of England, about two families who had little boats to mess around in. And the boats were called Swallow and Amazon, and so they were the Swallows and the Amazons. And the thing that really impressed me, as with Alice, was how much personal freedom they had, these kids. They could go off without adults sailing on the lake. They could camp on an island in the middle of the lake. They had almost no adult supervision. And growing up in India, in a world which was much more supervised, I thought that was a fairy tale.
Right.
The freedom these children had. And same true of Alice, as she wanders through Wonderland.
You mentioned your sister. When asked to describe a young you, she said, he's very straight and he's very honest. I think it's the honesty that has led him to do the things that he does.
I think writing requires great honesty. The reader can tell if the writer is faking it. All writing, I think, whatever technique it uses, whatever manner or style, etc., is a way of approaching the truth. And if that's not your plan, probably what you write isn't worth reading.
But I heard you say once that honesty, not always the best policy in life, but in art, required.
Yeah, in life, we see all around us the enormous power of dishonesty. Dishonesty combined with the other great quality, which is shamelessness.
And how much of either do you have?
None. I mean, for example, I'm unable to lie about a book. If I read a book and I don't like it.
We're going to try to not get you in too much trouble today with that.
Right. No, it's just people say, I mean, my family would all say, we can all tell when you're lying because it shows on your face.
But you as a boy, did you kiss a book before you kissed a girl?
Yes, no question. I mean, because we were taught, I wrote about it, that there are two things that if you drop them on the ground, you have to kiss them when you pick them up. And they were books and bread. Food for the body and food for the soul, I guess. But those things were to be treasured. You didn't treat these things lightly. There are some families in which the only book you would kiss if it fell on the ground would be a holy book. But in my family, it was drop any book on the ground. Ask it to forgive you.
And would it?
Oh, yes. The books are very kind.
The books would forgive. Would your parents?
Oh, yeah. I mean, my parents were just pleased that they had given birth to a bookworm. They were very anxious that I should read a lot, and very happy that I did.
In the past, you've described your childhood as, quote, very untypically Indian. What does that mean?
Well, for a start, that there was really not that much religion in it, and that's pretty untypical in India. My father was lacking entirely in religious belief, although he was quite a scholar of it. Unlike me, he knew and had studied Arabic and Farsi, and so he could read these texts in the original, which I can't. My mother was maybe a little bit more religious than my father, but it really didn't extend much further than not eating the flesh of the swine. No pigs was her religion.
That's where she drew the line.
Yeah.
I want to set the foundation for people who don't know. Like, did people from Bombay, did they think of themselves as being unlike people from elsewhere?
Yeah, I think it's a quality of the metropolis. And I think it's true of many metropolises. It's, New York doesn't feel like America. Paris doesn't feel like France. Bombay doesn't feel like India. And one of the reasons is that one of the natures of the metropolis is how plural it is, how many different kinds of people are there. And in India, for example, if you are in Delhi, the people who are there are mostly from that region. And if you're in Calcutta, mostly Bengali speaking. If you're in Chennai, mostly Tamil speaking. If you're in Bombay, everybody's there. Everything north of Bombay is North India. Everything south of Bombay is South India. And it becomes, because it's the great engine of the economy, it attracts people from everywhere. So like in New York, walking around, you hear every language. You see people from all over the country, which is, even in other Indian cities, you don't. So it feels special.
Part of you becoming a writer was not just that you loved reading. Your father loved reading to you and your sister.
Yes. My father had, amongst other things, in his library, a multi-volume edition of the 1001 Nights in the notorious Richard Burton translation, which is full of footnotes about sex.
And he would share those footnotes?
No, he would leave those parts out. I inherited the books, and then I discovered the footnotes.
You did further investigation.
Yeah, but he was very well versed in this storehouse of wonder tales that is available if you're growing up in that part of the world.
Mm-hmm.
1001 Nights, yes, but also the Indian versions. There's a collection called The Ocean of the Streams of Story, Katha Sarit Sagar from Kashmir.
Mm.
There's the Panchtantra animal fables. There are the great epics, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata.
Mm.
And all of that is the seed for the kind of writer that I became. And my first encounter with all of that was in my father's versions as bedtime stories.
But it's funny, like, it's the version of the writer you became. Even now, you're describing only one half of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is another half. And I say that because it's my understanding that even to this day, you and your sister have a blow-up photo that your father took with his Rolleiflex.
Yes. Yes.
You were probably 7 or 8 years old, and it features you
and my two sisters
reading Peter Pan to them.
Yeah.
And in Knife, you write, "The photograph, a childhood ideal that masks the truth." You've described the ideal. What was the truth?
Well, the truth was that my parents had a pretty difficult marriage, and it was largely difficult because of my father's drinking problem, and which got worse as he got older. And my mother did her best when we were little to shield us from it. But even when we were in our bedroom at night, we could hear shouting, and were aware of the fact that there was something dangerous about my father's anger. And it just got worse. As we grew up, he was actually quite a good parent of little children. He was very entertaining and enjoyable and fun to be around in the daytime, not at night. Right. As he got older, as we got older, that ceased to be so. He didn't know how to deal with us as grown-ups. Mm-hmm. And so my relationship with him was for a long time not good, and I'm just happy to say that we made it up in the end.
As you got older, was the truth made clear to you, or perhaps felt most acutely, in those couple weeks before you are sent to rugby school?
Yeah.
Because as a teenager, your father takes you up to England, and the two of you check into a double room at the Cumberland Hotel at Marble Arch. Was it there that you saw what you had only heard behind the walls?
Yes. I mean, it was a very shocking moment for me because we were sharing a room, as you say, and we were also sharing a room with Johnny Walker. And my father and Johnny Walker had a close relationship most evenings. Was
he closer to Johnny than you?
Yes, I mean, he was entirely locked into his private world in the evening.
Okay.
And then it would get bad because I would go to sleep, but he would have whiskey induced rages. And you'd shake me awake and abuse me.
And say what?
Just use terrible language. I didn't even know that my father knew words like that.
Did he know that he was doing that?
Not then. I mean, he only knew when he sobered up the next day. But then he did it again.
So it was a kind of blackout.
Yeah. It was really a red rage.
And you had not seen that before?
I'd never seen it. And I'd never seen it aimed at me. I mean, when I'd heard it, it was always aimed at my mother.
But how did she handle that?
Well, she wasn't there. I mean, so this was
No, I meant as a kid.
Oh, no, it was very hard for her. I think, she had quite a hard life because of that. I mean, she lived he died not that old. I mean, he died at the age of 77 back in 1987. And she lived another 15 or 16 years. But I think her life with him was hard.
When he woke you up in the middle of the night, did you understand why he was doing that? Did it make any sense to you?
No, I was absolutely bewildered, and I guess what the word we would now use is traumatized. People didn't say that in those days.
No.
They just said I was scared.
I mean, I think it accurately describes what you endured.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it was trauma. And I remember the day that he took me to the boarding school to send me to school. I couldn't wait for him to leave. There's a photograph of me looking pretty unhappy, which wearing my school uniform. And if you see the photograph, you think, here's somebody who's unhappy about going to school. But no, I'm unhappy about the person taking the photograph and can't wait for him to leave. And that went on. I mean, a lot of my adult life, that attitude of alienation continued.
You've talked about this a lot, but one of the things I assume you're most frustrated by in the aftermath of the satanic verses is that people didn't read the book.
They didn't read the book. All the people who hated the book did so without troubling to open it.
Well, as someone who has read the book, there's a passage set in a hotel that I have not been able to stop thinking about since I read it. And in the interest of holding the text on this show, I'd love for you to read it, if you could.
Okay. Well, the character is the father of the main character that Changez Chamchawala is talking about. The father, Changez Chamchawala, became very still in those days, seeming not to care if he ate or drank or did any damn thing. He was happy sitting in the hotel room watching television, especially when the Flintstones were on, because he told his son that Wilma Bibi reminded him of Nasreen, that was his wife. Salahuddin tried to prove he was a man by fasting right along with his father, trying to outlast him, but he never managed it. And when the pangs got too strong, he went out of the hotel to the cheap joint nearby where you could buy takeaway roast chickens that hung greasily in the window, turning slowly on their spits. When he brought the chicken into the hotel lobby, he became embarrassed, not wanting the staff to see. So he stuffed it inside double-breasted serge and went up in the lift reeking of spit roast, his Macintosh bulging, his face turning red. Chicken-breasted, beneath the gaze of dowagers and liftwalas, he felt the birth of that implacable rage which would burn within him, undiminished, for over a quarter of a century, which would boil away his childhood father-worship and make him a secular man, who would do his best thereafter to live without a god of any type, which would fuel, perhaps, his determination to become the thing his father was not, could never be, that is, a good and proper Englishman.
I found that very hard to read, and I neither lived it nor wrote it.
Well, if one of the things writing can do is to get to the pain, and all of us in life have pain. You can't live a human life without it. And much of that pain is very deep, and much of it comes from places where there should be love. And if you're any good, that's where you go. The writing has to go for the blood. And when you get there, you're there, and there are moments. I mean, writing is not very easy. Right? It's the hardest thing I know how to do. It's the only thing I know how to do. But when you get to that moment of human truth, that's where you want to be.
And the blood drawn in that scene, it reads and looks like what to you now?
That book is long ago now, and so it feels a little bit long ago to me. I was much, when I finished that book, I was just 40. I mean, now I'm much older.
41.
Yeah, now I'm 41. Exactly. Feels like years ago. But I do think that it feels like a younger man's book. And I think that about Midnight's Children too. I mean, when I finished Midnight's Children, I was 33. It's more than half my life ago. So I look at it. I think, oh, that's how you were then.
Mm-hmm.
That's what was on your mind, and that's what was eating you up, and that's what needed to get out of you then. But having done it, I don't need to do it anymore because I expressed it.
But as a young man, Did you have that desire to become a good and proper Englishman?
No, never. I can think that's one way in which the character, which many people equate with the author, is not the author. Because one of the things I learned from my not very happy English boarding school experience was the experience of being the other. That they were the English people. I was the not English person.
So you go to this boarding school, and when you're done, you have about, I think it's 6 months before you're off to Cambridge. And of course, naturally, you go to the page and you write your first short novel called Terminal Report. Now, this book cannot be found.
It's lost.
It's lost.
Mercifully.
I tried. I searched everywhere, short of getting on a plane. I looked and looked and looked, but it does not exist.
It has been lost.
But if it were not lost, if it was to be excavated and read now in this moment, what would some of the pages have sounded like?
Well, it was about, look, it was written when I was 18 years old. It's 60 years ago. It was painfully autobiographical. There's no attempt to disguise anything. And it was about my last term at school when I was just turning 18 before I left. And so it was a report of that term. And all I remember about it, I'm sure it was absolutely terrible. Even in my brief memory of it, my very partial memory of it, I'm actually very grateful that it's lost.
But did it get anything right?
Yes, what it got right was racial prejudice.
How do you mean?
Towards the me character from the other boys, my contemporaries.
Your time at school?
Time at rugby school,
And what did that look like?
It looked like racism. It looked like racial abuse, and I would find racist words written up on the wall of my little room. I would find on more than one occasion that somebody had come into my room when I wasn't there and torn up the work I'd been doing. Had torn up my English essay. I learned about one thing that I remember about that young person is that, I came from a fairly conservative family, politically conservative, socially conservative,
and financially well off.
Financially well off. Later my father lost all his money, but at that time, he had plenty.
I think you once described him as a career of losing more and more money or something like that.
Yeah, he inherited a lot of money from my grandfather and basically lost it and then died. Anyway, at that time, yes, a quite well-off family, but very culturally and socially conservative. And I had those attitudes. So there's a bit of me that feels very unlike that young self, But the thing that young person knew everything about was racism, knew as much as I know now. But it was just, it was very difficult being at that school because there were relatively few. I think things would be different now, but there were relatively few not white people there. I remember one or two other boys of Indian Pakistani parentage. I remember one Palestinian boy, maybe one black. This is a school of 1,000 children, 1,000 boys.
You said that the only thing Terminal Report got right, the only thing it understood, was that feeling of otherness.
Yes.
Did you begin then to figure out how to go about combating that?
No, my initial response was when I left school and went back to see my family, was that I didn't want to go back to England. I said, let me go to university here.
Right.
I already had my place at Cambridge, but I didn't want to go.
Because you didn't want a sequel to that.
I just thought I don't want more of that.
Right.
And
4 years was enough.
Yeah. And another bunch of years, I thought, no, thank you. And actually, my father persuaded me that I should give it a try.
How did he do that?
We just talked to each other. Sometimes when we weren't fighting, we got on quite well.
When he wasn't the man taking the photograph that you were upset about.
Yeah, when he wasn't, before he got into the evening's
right
whiskey,
before Johnny entered the equation.
Before Johnny entered the story.
So before he entered the story, there was a civil-minded conversation, and you decided to go to Cambridge.
Yes, and Cambridge was very healing for me because it was the exact opposite of what rugby had been like. There were people from everywhere, literally everywhere, and everybody was smart. Many of them were smarter than me. I mean, I was used to doing very well in class at school, which was my revenge. But when I got to Cambridge...
But revenge on whom?
All of them. But when I got to Cambridge, of course, everybody's smart. Everybody's really brilliant.
Right. How do you exact revenge then?
No, you don't need to, because suddenly people are behaving differently. And I didn't experience a moment of racism at Cambridge.
Were people encouraging of your writing?
Yes. I was fortunate. I mean, I didn't do a degree in English.
Yeah, it was history.
I did a degree in history, but I had a kind of fluency. So, my essays were well regarded. That was history essays. And that was the first writing I did.
Was your father encouraging of your work?
No, I mean, he wasn't there at all, really, because he was not in England. He visited me, I think, about once when I was at Cambridge. But he never thought that writing was a real job. That's a hobby. And when I graduated and I told him that I would like to try my hand at being a writer, his response was, "What will I tell my friends?" It was kind of almost shameful that this only son of his, who had been given all the privileges of a fancy education, instead of doing something useful, wanted to do something useless. And what will I tell my friends? And what was fortunate for me is that he lived long enough for the success of Midnight's Children to mean that his friends started telling him how to feel about it. And then it was better.
And getting into Midnight's Children, in college, much has been made about how you stumbled upon the satanic verses. And how it was there that you became interested in the history of India, the United States, and Islam. But it was really your personal history, I think, that you had to revisit in order to write Midnight's Children. So after a post-college decade of writing and stumbling about, tell me about this trip you take back to India to immerse yourself in the world you had left behind.
Yeah, it was in the early 70s, I guess. I was living in London, working as an advertising copywriter. Writing felt like a kind of dream rather than a reality.
You wrote about chocolates.
I wrote about chocolates, and I had to write a travel campaign encouraging British people to take their vacation in America. One of the great things about that was that the photography was done by the great Elliot Erwitt.
Wow.
So that was a moment. Sometimes through advertising, you meet extraordinary people.
Are there any clever bits of ad copy that you still hold on to?
Yes, but I don't want to go there.
Look, I mean, I have it here, but
I know you have it there. There were two campaigns that became very successful. One was a campaign for cream cakes, which to encourage people to eat fresh cream cakes, like eclairs and stuff. And the slogan I came up with was "Naughty but nice." And I remember when we were pitching it, that the cream cakes client, for there is such a person, complained. And he said, "But you're telling people that cream cakes make them fat." And I said, "Well, they know that. You should focus on the but nice." Anyway, in the end, they did run with it. It did run for a long time. The other campaign, I had the idea because the writer I was working with had a stammer, and it was for a chocolate bar called Aero, which has bubbles in the chocolate. And we were trying to come up with a campaign idea, and it was very urgent because the client was coming in that afternoon and we didn't have anything to tell him.
Mm.
And my friend, David, who was actually, it was his account, when he got very nervous, he began to sweat and he began to stammer. And so the phone in his office rang and he answered it and he stammered. He said, "That's impossible." And I had this kind of light bulb moment. And so I started writing words that ended in bubble. So, adorable, incredible, delectable. Shop window saying available here. Bus sides saying transportable.
Did ad man Salman know that one day a Booker Prize was in his future?
No. I just wanted to, like a lot of people working as advertising people, they're all dreaming of the way out. Many people working in creative departments of ad agencies have a kind of pilot for a television series in their bottom drawer.
And so your way out was to return back home.
Yeah, I just thought there was a point at which I gave up the job because I thought I have to reconnect with where I come from. And so with my then girlfriend, who became the mother of my first son, we went to India with whatever money we'd saved up, and our plan was to go there as cheaply as possible and make the money stretch as far as possible. And so we were there for, 4 or 5 months, traveling, living in, kind of basically flop houses and traveling on long distance buses and, being kids. We were young, I was in my mid-20s.
Re-immersing yourself.
Yeah, and some of it was going back to places that I had known well, and some of it was going to places I'd never been, but that I had an instinct that I wanted to know. So I'd never been to Calcutta, but we went. I'd never seen the River Ganges, so we went to see that in Benares.
And the light bulb moment came when?
Well, I came away very happy to have rejoined myself, if you like, and I thought I wanted to write a novel out of my childhood. That I didn't have a bigger plan for it than that, just to write a novel about childhood. And then, because, I was born exactly 8 weeks to the day before the end of the British Empire in India. And at some point, I just thought, supposing it wasn't 8 weeks, supposing it was the same day, what would that mean? And I realized at that point, A, that I thought it was probably a very good idea, and B, that it enormously expanded the book because it meant history poured into it. And I was a historian by training.
The twin selves, the birth of a young boy and the birth of a new nation, inextricably linked.
Yes. And another twinning as well, because the boys exchanged at birth. A rich child and a poor child exchanged for each other.
And from that light bulb moment comes, I think, the first page of Midnight's Children.
Yes.
Shall we give it a read?
Yes. Can almost do it by heart, but there we are. I was born in the city of Bombay once upon a time. No, that won't do. There's no getting away from the date. I was born in Dr. Narlikar's nursing home on August the 15th, 1947. And the time matters too. Well, then at night. No, it's important to be more on the stroke of midnight, as a matter of fact. Clock hands joined palms in respectful greeting as I came. Oh, spell it out, spell it out. At the precise instant of India's arrival at independence, I tumbled forth into the world. There were gasps, and outside the window fireworks and crowds. A few seconds later, my father broke his big toe, but his accident was a mere trifle when set beside what had befallen me in that benighted moment. Because thanks to the occult tyrannies of those blandly saluting clocks, I had been mysteriously handcuffed to history, my destinies indissolubly chained to those of my country. For the next 3 decades, there was to be no escape. Soothsayers had prophesied me, newspapers celebrated my arrival, politicos ratified my authenticity. I was left entirely without a say in the matter. I, Salim Sinai, later variously called Snot-Nose, Stainface, Baldy, Sniffer, Buddha, and even Piece of the Moon, had become heavily embroiled in fate. At the best of times, a dangerous sort of involvement. And I couldn't even wipe my own nose at the time. Yeah, that happened because when I started writing Midnight Children, I didn't write it in the first person. I wrote some of it in the third person, and it really didn't work.
It was more Tolstoy than you?
Yeah, it just wasn't alive on the page. And then at one point I thought, just let me see what happens if I let him tell the story. And that paragraph came out of me. And I remember that day vividly. And I feel it as the moment I became a writer, because it was clearly the best page I'd ever written in my life, by a long way. And I thought, where'd that come from?
Yeah, that's the question. Where did that come from?
Came from the magic place where stories live. And if you're lucky, you find the door. And that was the day I found the door. And then I just thought, just let him go, you know. Let him run and hang on to his coattails and see where it goes.
Mm.
And so I always felt that he wrote the book. I just typed it out.
Do you believe that?
I do believe it because it felt like that.
Mm.
I mean, of course, there's a sense in which I don't believe it because he doesn't exist. But he existed for me vividly during the writing of that book.
Mm.
And
you remember that day vividly. Have you seen those musical biopics that like about Queen?
Yes.
And they're horrible movies.
Yes.
I mean, maybe you feel differently. I think they're not very good. And one of the reasons they're kind of horrible is because every song is reduced to the silliest, most inane moment where a song is created out of like a sound in the room.
Yes.
And then they do We Will Rock You.
Mm-hmm.
If this wasn't a movie about your life, they would say, this is too obvious. And yet it seems to be very much true. And you still remember that day.
I do. You know, I tell you what reminded me. I saw this enormous documentary that Peter Jackson made about the Beatles.
Amazing. Get Back.
Yeah. And there's a moment in it where Paul McCartney is sitting there with his guitar, fooling around, just fooling around, not doing anything. Mm. And then suddenly starts finding something. And then by a kind of miracle, what comes out of the guitar is Get Back. Mm-hmm. You know, that everybody in the world recognizes.
It's an amazing moment.
You see the act of creation in real time.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
It's a funny bit of dramatic irony too, because you know the song.
Yes.
And you're just going, if only that man, Paul McCartney,
let him find it,
could just figure it out.
Yeah.
I wish we could help him.
And then he figures it out. But it's just the only thing I've ever seen, something which looks like the creative act being captured in its moment of happening. Mm. You know, very, very beautiful.
It's an amazing moment.
Yeah. And that reminded me of writing that page.
Of that day. Mm. You remember that day.
Yeah.
Was Midnight's Children an act of reclamation?
Yes.
And if so, what were you trying to reclaim?
My childhood, my race, my culture, India, everything.
Quite a lot.
Everything. My view is that you can write good books in two ways. They can either be everything books, in which you try and put as much of the world as you could possibly get into the book.
Kitchen sink.
Yeah, just everything.
Spaghetti at the wall, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, or you can write almost nothing books, which take one tiny little beautiful strand and turn it in the light and tell that story. That can be enormously beautiful.
And which book do you prefer writing?
I would love to be able to write the one hair in the light book.
Yeah, that
doesn't come out that way.
It's very hard to do that.
No, I think I have this encyclopedic aspect that I want to cram in all of life.
Pell-mell.
Yeah. Yes, just everything. Books don't have to be... One of the great things about novels is how capacious they are. How they can be about many, many things without becoming things that the reader gets lost in. Because also, I had no idea how that book would be received. Because it's, now there's a whole body of work of Indian writing in English, which many of those writers have highly admired. You just had Arundhati Roy on your program. That's one of them. But there's a whole range. I mean, there's Kiran Desai's great book coming out this year, which I think, she's already won the Booker once. She might win it again. But then Indian writing in English was I felt it was at a crossroads. That maybe in this sort of post-colonial moment, that kind of writing would just dwindle away and there are plenty of Indian languages to write in. So I didn't know if I was at the end of something, at the end of a tradition. What I didn't understand is what was going to happen.
Well, what happened?
Well, it just exploded.
Yeah.
It exploded all over the world in ways that I couldn't have dreamed of.
In terms of what happened, I feel like there's a whole lot of ground for us to cover there. The 80s were pretty good.
The 80s were pretty good. Living in London, in the world of books, it was a pretty good time for the world of books. There were a lot of young writers arriving all at the same time, who were all pretty good. And we all got called a generation, which at the time we all kind of resisted, because it wasn't like we were a team. It wasn't like we were surrealists.
Yeah, it wasn't the dream team.
No, but the fact that Martin Amis, Ian McEwan, Julian Barnes, Angela Carter, Jeanette Winterson, Bruce Chatwin, Timothy Moe, Kazuo Ishiguro. I mean, it's a long list.
It's a good bunch.
And all more or less all at the same time. And at the time, we all said, no, but, I don't know him and I don't like her. And we all resisted the idea of being a generation. Now I think we're all pretty pleased about it. Because that decade, the 80s, yes, it was very good for me. Ended badly.
Feels like an understatement. Oh, man. September 1988. Let me ask you, to do a little, as a little callback to your ad writing days. Imagine that you meet a Martian who speaks English, but doesn't know what the satanic verses is. And you have 100 words to explain the book to him. Where do you begin?
Well, I begin by saying it's a novel about London. I think that's what it primarily is. And it's about a novel about London in that moment, London of that time, of the 1980s, the London of Margaret Thatcher, and particularly focused on the South Asian community in London. I'd done a lot of work, volunteer work in race relations in the 70s and early 80s. And so I knew very well where the community was and what were its struggles and tensions, and et cetera. So I wanted to write a book arising out of that knowledge. So that's one thing, one way of describing it. Another way of describing it is to say it's about two actors. One a big movie star and one a kind of voiceover guy who's good at accents. And it's about and they become representatives, if you like, of a kind of force in the world which is angelic and demonic. Although it's at various points in the book, it's unclear which one is which. So it's about an angel and a devil falling into London.
And at the time of writing it, did you see it as a chapter turn in your relationship to India?
I thought I'd written to my previous two novels, Midnight Children and Shame, had dealt with India and Pakistan.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I should write a novel about where I came to, not only about where I came from.
Right.
And that was the driving force in it. And, there are these 2 chapters which are dream sequences because one of the characters is A, going mad, and B, losing his faith. And he has these dreams about the birth of a religion. And those were the chapters that some people didn't like.
And when people talk about the book, they of course focus on Valentine's Day of the next year in 1989, when a fatwa is issued and the Ayatollah condemns you to death for what you've written in the satanic verses. But I was curious about what happened a month earlier with protests that saw people crucifying your book and then once crucified on the post, setting it aflame.
Yeah. Well,
do you remember that?
Of course I remember it. You will have seen the many photographs of it. I mean, that was exactly 1 month before the Iranian threats. It was January the 14th of 1989 was the date of the book burning in the town of Bradford in the north of England. Bradford, the town with one of the largest Muslim communities.
Here are a couple of the photos. When you look at that, what does it produce in you?
I try not to let it produce the kind of rage that I felt at the time. Book burning has a history. Not a very impressive history.
Sordid, I think.
Yeah, and if you're a person in the world of books, and you're brought up kissing books, burning books is like sacrilege.
And the rage felt like what?
It felt like watching Kristallnacht. It felt like watching Nazi book burnings. I thought, what? In England now, people are burning books? And there's the famous line of Heinrich Heine where he says, where they burn books, they will afterwards burn people. And interestingly, that line comes from a play that he wrote in which the book that's being burned is the Quran. And he's objecting to that. So oddly, that line, which was written to defend a sacred text from being burned, has now become a kind of famous line about the danger of burning books. And we're not quite there yet in this country. Getting there.
That's also one of the reasons I brought it back up, is because looking at those photos, it's hard not to think of this moment.
My books were always unpopular with people of formal religious belief. And I thought, well, they probably won't like this one either, but they don't have to read a 600-page novel in order to dislike it. You can just not read it.
A Muslim MP at the time said, "Yes, I have not read the satanic verses, nor do I intend to. I do not have to wade through a filthy drain to know what filth is."
And I used to get very worked up about the fact that the people attacking the book were not reading it.
Can I say I'm worked up about it?
Well, then, if you think about the history of the persecution of books, it's almost always the case that the persecutors don't read the book. When James Joyce was accused of pornography, it was quite clear that nobody had read Ulysses, because although Joyce had much genius, arousing sexual desire was probably not one of his gifts. When people accused Nabokov for Lolita of defending pederasts, they cannot have read a book that is unbelievably moral. So then I thought, maybe it's always the case that you have to not read the book in order to attack it. Because reading the book must give you a more complicated relationship with it. Hard to burn a book that you've read.
We're in a moment right now in American politics where There is hatred and disdain for things they have not waded into. They have not read the books being banned across this country.
Yeah.
They don't care to read them. It's sight unseen. They're not even judging a book on its cover.
Just
They're
for
judging
existing.
it on the explanation of the cover from someone else.
Yes. Well, we live in a moment in which, for some people, culture and education have become the enemy. So, and look at the books that are being banned. They're some of the greatest things created in this country. Beloved, Huckleberry Finn. These are books that To Kill a Mockingbird. These are the books that are now, we're being told, are bad for you. Whereas actually they're incredibly good for you.
When the Satanic Verses was burned, and yes, the fatwa was issued, the thing that has stayed with me is the real world consequences beyond you having to go into hiding, which in and of itself is severe. I mean, the book is pulled from shelves in America.
Yeah. For a while.
2 bookstores in Berkeley were firebombed. An Arab terrorist accidentally blew himself up in a Paddington hotel before he was able to attack you. There were a series of expulsions from Britain of other Iranians who were suspected of plotting against the author. And then finally, the Japanese translator of the book was murdered. Your Italian translator was injured by a knife-wielding assistant. And your Norwegian publisher, a close friend of yours, barely survived a shooting. You've said that this moment in time showed you the worst of people, but it also showed you the best of them. What did that look like?
Well, first of all, in the publishing community, you've described some of the acts of violence against publishing people and booksellers. In spite of that, to put it simply, everybody held the line. The book, yes, briefly it was withdrawn from the chains of the time, B. Dalton, Walden Books. But quite soon it was replaced, largely, well, not largely, but in part because of pressure from writers.
What did Stephen King do to help out?
Well, Stephen King, I owe him a vote of thanks, because my understanding is that he called the chief executives of the chains. Stephen King, as it happened, by chance, completely random chance, had read the Satanic Verses when it came out, well ahead of the attack against it, and really liked it. Go figure. he really thought it was a good book. So when this happened, he had the reaction of somebody who had really liked the book. So he called these chiefs of the chains and said that they better put it back on the shelves or they could take all his books off. And then, I believe this is true, said that he was going to call a number of other kind of super-selling writers and encourage them to take the same position. And so the book went back on the shelves, thanks to Stephen King.
Why did you think these strangers, these people who worked at bookstores, or even your collaborators, the publishers, translators, why do you think they held the line?
Because they believed in the world of the book.
Even at the risk of their own safety.
Even at the risk of their own safety. Isn't that extraordinary? Books are things that people who love books. And also, freedom of speech is not only the ability to write what you want, it's also the ability to read what you want. It's also the ability not to have what you read determined for you by the tyrant of a foreign country. It was different in different countries. In France, for example, writers are still held in such high regard that the reaction there was, how can you do that to a serious writer? I think in this country, the First Amendment was held in such high regard that this was a crime against the First Amendment, and people reacted in that way. So there were different motivations in different places. But what happened is that, the book, was published all over the world and has remained in print ever since. So that was it was a very bad moment when those attacks happened. Very bad for me personally, of course, much worse for the people involved. But I feel that it was a battle that we won that was worth winning.
And the responsibility, did you feel responsible for those people being injured?
Yes, of course. I did.
How does someone hold something like that?
Well, I remember calling my friend, my Norwegian publisher, William Nygaard, who had been shot, to apologize to him, and he told me to stop. He said, I'm a publisher. I'm grown up. I publish books that I want to publish, and I wanted to publish your book. And then, comic pause. And then he said, I've just ordered a very large reprint. I thought, that's a brave man. When you're lying in hospital with 3 bullet wounds in your back.
You said in the past that the biggest damage that the attack on the satanic verses did to me was not physical danger. It was the damage to people's thinking about my writing.
Yep.
Was that damage and that thinking, was that all renewed come August 12th?
Yeah, to some degree.
Of 2022? To
some degree, yes. I think, here we are still talking about it. I've written 23 books, and a lot of them disappear. And I think it is just inevitable that something which becomes such a big news story overpowers everything else. And I think all I can do is go on writing. And that's one of the reasons why the thing that pleases me about this book. Well, 2 things. One is that it exists, that I was able to write it, and that it's fiction again, because I see myself really as a storyteller of making things up. That's my job. I've written memoirs, yes, and essays and so on, but I think of myself as a fiction writer. So it's just very nice to be able to say to people, here's what I actually do.
Yeah. And one of the things you actually do in this new book that I wasn't surprised by, but it was nice to see again, was write jokes. I laughed a lot.
Oh, good.
Reading this new book. And I heard you say on the Ezra Klein show that after the satanic verses, and then with Knife, nobody wrote about me as a funny writer. It was as if, because the thing that had happened to me was not funny, that it was dark and obscurely theological, I must be dark and obscurely theological.
Yeah, that happened.
So when you're attacked on that stage, August 12th, 10:47 in the morning, and you're back in the hospital, and you're brought to the hospital, I have so many questions, but how do you keep a sense of humor about that when your life is at such great danger?
Well, I'm not sure exactly, but I'm happy that my sense of humor didn't get murdered. For a long time, I wasn't thinking about anything other than staying alive.
Right.
Which was not a guaranteed thing. It was very close. But gallows humor is a thing too.
Do you think the reason you were able to stay alive was because of your wife?
I think it's because of my wife. It's because of medical science and the skill of the surgeon, and luck.
You think it's luck?
Luck. The injuries, had they been just slightly differently located, would have ended the story right there. In fact, one of the surgeons in the hospital said to me that my good luck was that the man who tried to kill me had no idea how to kill a man with a knife.
He also seemed to have no idea how to read any of your work.
No, he was not interested.
What offends you more, that he stabbed you, or that he stabbed you having only read 2 pages of your work?
No, I'm more offensive that he stabbed me.
Okay.
I could do without.
But would you have preferred he was well-versed in the literature of yours?
No, I don't take that view. I would have preferred that he hadn't stuck a knife in me.
I just think that, if you're going to do something like that, you should be well-read.
Yes, I thought it was...
Under-motivated.
Well, that's what I think I said it somewhere in life, that if I had created that character, my editor would probably have said there's not sufficient motivation. There's not enough reason for him to do what he did. And that's one of the reasons why when writing Knife, I tried to get inside his head. I had this, in this otherwise completely non-fictional book, there's a chapter where I imagine a conversation with him in which I try and get inside his head.
Which is where you allude to the shadow story.
Yeah. And I mean, I did toy with the idea of trying to have a meeting with him, which people in my family were strongly against.
They didn't want you to do that.
They didn't want me to do that. I'm not sure that he would have wanted to do it. In fact, I'm pretty sure that he wouldn't have wanted to do it.
What did you want to get out of a conversation with him?
To say, why?
You wanted to ask why?
Yeah.
Why do you think?
Well, I think he went to his father's village in Lebanon, which was a very Hezbollah village. And he came back from that visit changed, according to his mother. And from then on, he was a person radicalized and looking for a way of expressing that. And that became me, unfortunately.
It's impossible to talk about this moment just 3 years ago without holding this time in American life where we're on the heels of what is one of the most horrific acts of political violence we've seen on video in recent memory. Charlie Kirk, I don't think, had one idea that I liked or supported. And yet, having watched that video, and I did watch it, I have to say I did think about you.
Well, you're not the only one who did that. Look, I've spent my life arguing that the whole point about free speech is to defend speech that you don't like. It's no trick to defend the speech of people that you agree with or people whose statements you're indifferent to. That's easy. Where you discover if you believe in free expression is when somebody says something you really don't like. And that's across the spectrum. It's not one side or the other. But I think that's a lesson about free expression that is being forgotten. And I'm not just talking about this recent terrible murder.
Why is it being forgotten?
I think, well, for different reasons. I think on the right, in this authoritarian moment, it's clear that free speech equals speech that we want to be said and doesn't extend to speech that we don't like. What's more concerning to me is that more liberal progressive people also seem to feel that denying certain kinds of speech a platform is worth doing. That if you like censoring speech that you think to be improper for various reasons, whether it's improper racially or sexually or for whatever reason, that's just a very slippery slope. And I try and say that as whenever I can.
You said that the knife event could not take your sense of humor. What did it take from you?
It took from me, for a start, a kind of innocence that I had come to believe. I mean, I've been living in America for 25 years. And for 22 of those 25 years, I was living perfectly normal life, and I had come to believe that the threat, such as it was, had faded away. And I had more than 2 decades of evidence to prove that. I had done any number of public events without any hint of trouble. I mean, hundreds. And so it removed that sense of what I just said was innocence, but also, let's say, safety. And it made me understand that if I'm going to go on doing anything in the way of a public life, that I have to think about how to do that differently with more precautions.
In 2023, you told David Remnick in The New Yorker, it's getting to be difficult to call India a democracy because a democracy is not just who wins the election. It's whether you feel safe in the country, whether you voted for the government in power or not.
Mm-hmm.
Do these descriptions, originally fit for India, now describe how you see America?
Beginning to. I mean, I don't want to get ahead of myself. You don't want to run ahead of history.
Mm-hmm.
This is not yet a dictatorship.
Mm-hmm.
But there are people here who wouldn't mind if it was.
Mm.
And some of the most powerful people in America are included in that list.
Do you feel safe saying things that are not necessarily in line with the Republican Party?
So far, I'll let you know.
You don't have to worry with me.
I mean, listen, I'm too long in the tooth to censor myself. I'm just going to say what I'm going to say.
Right. If you were going to censor yourself, it would have happened a long time ago.
It would have happened a long time ago. And one of the things I've learned in this unusual literary life is that self-censorship is the worst crime. It's a crime against yourself.
Mm.
And I think one of the things we're talking about now here that is evident is that comedy is what upsets power the most.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a funny book.
And is that one of the reasons why you agreed to be part of that season of Curb Your Enthusiasm?
Well, thank you for discussing my most important work.
That we really try to hit all the bases here.
No, what had happened was that I had met Larry David very briefly.
You're at the Vanity Fair party.
But I didn't know him. Right. I mean, we'd had a brief chat.
You didn't know him?
No, not really.
He's a funny guy.
And then, no, I mean, I liked the show.
Yeah. Were you a Seinfeld guy? You're in Seinfeld as well.
But not personally. I'm referred to.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was referred to. I'm in all sorts of stuff. I'm in the Golden Girls.
I'm where? You were going to even maybe be in Talladega Nights.
That is a great regret of mine.
That you're not in it?
That we didn't find the date.
You know what? If they make a sequel.
But the joke was that they would have the 3 least likely NASCAR drivers dressed up in their uniform in slow motion, heat haze, Take My Breath Away on the soundtrack.
Oh.
And it was going to be Lou Reed, Julian Schnabel, and me.
That's good.
It would have been wonderful.
That would have been amazing. And you would have got the 3 of you. That triumvirate would have had its own spin-off sequel.
Well, I hope that yes. Anyway, we wanted to do it, but we couldn't. The date didn't work, so they dropped the idea. Anyway, no, Curb. I met him, as you say, at the Vanity Fair party. There's no good way of saying that.
I know, by the way, you're like, as you say, as if I invented it whole cloth. It's a good party. Go ahead.
Well, there's no other way of saying it.
That's okay.
Yeah. It was, I was standing in a little group of me and Larry David and Lin-Manuel Miranda who were chatting. And anyway, then months passed.
Were you a big Hamilton guy?
I did like it very much, yes. I've seen it twice. I saw it first when it was at the Public Theater. And then I saw it again when it opened on Broadway. And I thought it was terrific. I really like it. But anyway, so my agents got a phone call from Larry David's agent saying that he would like to talk to me. So I said, give him my phone number, and he called me up. And then he said, they had this idea, and did I want to be in it? And my first thought was, is this funny or is it not funny? I mean, there was a long part of my life when it wouldn't have been funny at all. And then I thought, okay, if we've reached a point at which we can have fun with it, then that's a kind of victory. So I said, yeah, okay, I'll do it. And he admitted to me afterwards that they had no plan B. They wouldn't have known what to do if I'd said no.
Curb Your Enthusiasm, and I promise we really are supposed to go back to the work, but now you've got me on this Curb bit. Curb Your Enthusiasm, there's no scripts.
No, I know.
It's all an outline.
Because that's what I asked him. I said, can I read a script? And he said, that's okay. Difficult because there's no script.
So those improvised lines, did that come from a lived experience?
That was, or a fantasy of a lived experience. But actually, I was quite proud of myself because I was worried that these people that I was on screen with are geniuses of improv.
Very good.
You know, and I thought I don't want to be the only person who's no good.
Yeah.
You know, but
you were an actor out of college a little bit.
But I think I got away with it.
I think you did.
It was really fun. I was only there 2 days, but it was very enjoyable days.
I like this thing though. I think it's true. Comedy is the thing they do not want.
They do not want it.
Yeah, because the moment you laugh at something, you kind of...
It loses its power.
Yeah.
You know, and so, comedy is the most powerful tool with which to fight tyranny.
Well, the second most powerful tool, I think, at least for you, is the written word. And thinking about your work, when you're in the hospital and you're prescribed a litany of drugs, I heard that you had some hallucinations. And I wondered, what does Salman Rushdie hallucinate about?
Well, it was so odd because what I hallucinated was alphabets. I felt, first of all, letters floating in the air, just in between me and whatever was in the room.
Mm-hmm.
But
your wife, your sons.
Yeah, people, doctors, nurses, medical equipment. But also I hallucinated places like palaces and castles, which were entirely composed of, like the bricks were made up of letters.
Mm.
So I hallucinated the world of books, I guess.
Mm.
It was very strange. I really liked it. And then I guess they took me off the fentanyl or whatever, and the hallucinations went away. And I was kind of disappointed.
Right.
I liked them. I can still see them.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, everything comes out somewhere. I haven't used them yet as a story, but I bet I do.
I love that even while high, it comes back to the letters and words.
It comes back to the alphabet.
What do you think that is about you and your brain?
I think, if you spend, I've now been a published writer for more than half a century. That's a long time.
How do you feel saying that?
Old. But also kind of, it's the life I wanted. But it's the world I've lived in all my adult life. So it's who I am. It's what I am.
In this new book of yours, 11th Hour, there's a story. It's called Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
And it really seems to be reckoning with the man who's been published for 50 years. And the younger version that was excited to do it, and the older one that sits before me today, all wrapped up in this amazing piece.
It's by far the weirdest story in the book.
100%. And it maybe strikes you as no surprise that it's my favorite.
But I really am proud of it because that was technically very hard to write.
Mm-hmm. So to set it up for people.
Well, the novel of Kafka's that relatively few people read is actually the one that he wrote first, which is given the title America. Mm-hmm. He didn't have a title for it, but he did toy with calling it The Man Who Disappeared. Mm. And in that novel, his protagonist, Carl, at a certain point gets a job with a mysterious thing called the Nature Theater of Oklahoma. Nobody knows actually what that does. And he gets on a train with a friend, and they're going to Oklahoma. And Kafka told his friends that he wanted Carl in Oklahoma to find some kind of happy ending, to find some kind of fulfillment. The idea of a Kafka happy ending is bizarre, but anyway, but he never gets there because Kafka has him in the train going to Oklahoma, and he stops writing, and he never finished the book. Mm. So Carl was just stuck in the train, for the rest forever. And I thought, okay, The Man Who Disappeared. Let me start there. Mm. And then it became a story about, as you say, about the well-known trope of the old grizzly old-timer and the young buck, and what is their relationship like.
And yet you strike me as Neither of those.
Or both of those.
Or both of them.
I think both of those.
It's an amalgamation.
Yeah. Because I still feel that I have a kind of access to my younger self.
Mm-hmm.
Not my younger self as a person, but my younger self as a writer.
Right. Not physically.
Not physically, but the person who wrote Midnight's Children. I'm still that person too.
Why?
I just think writing is, if you do it right, it's writing. The writer that you are is with you forever. Even if you change a lot, because I think I don't write the way I used to write.
Mm-hmm.
But I still feel I have access to that young person. So when I was writing about this young person who is a complete mess, and he may well be a kind of fraud and a phony, but I found him very easy to write.
Yeah, he has a little bit of a talented Mr. Ripley vibe.
Yes, he has a little bit of that. And the old gent has bits of me, of course, but also bits of writers I met when I was young and who were older, who I spent a little time with.
I was really trying to make guesses of who you were alluding to.
Well, there's nobody exactly,
but there's like a few different people. But
yeah.
I don't know. I don't want to get it wrong.
There's about half a dozen people who add up to the character.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, the story is, part of it is set in Long Island, in what was then not called the Hamptons. That came later. But there was a whole bunch of really very eminent older writers there, all of whom I met. Peter Matheson, and Vonnegut, and Doctorow, and etc. There was a whole James Salter,
mm-hmm.
William Gaddis, a lot of those guys, William Gass. I met a lot of those people when I was young. And I think this fellow is a bit of all of them.
There is fashion in literature as in all things,
mm-hmm.
as the older man says. And finally, you may become fashionable again, a development which, like any true artist, you should despise.
Yeah, it's a good line, right? I mean, my view is that one of the things you have to be as a writer is immune to the winds of fashion. You have to not think about that.
How do you not think about that?
You have to know the road you're on.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be very clear. And that's what I felt after the attack on the Satanic Verses. What I told myself is, you know the road you're on. You know the direction you want to go as a writer. So go down the damn road. Don't be deflected. And that's what I've done all my life. I've just thought, okay, this is the road I'm on. And I would really love it for everybody to come along.
How many books did you say you've written?
This is the number 23.
At 23 books in, remember that day that we talked about? The day you felt like you first became a writer?
Mm-hmm.
Do those days
still happen? There are good days. I think every writer would say that every so often there's a good day when you think, oh, this stuff's easy. And then the next 20 days are really difficult. There's always there's a moment in the movie Shakespeare in Love when Shakespeare is shown writing at what we afterwards discover to be Romeo and Juliet. And there's a moment where he gets up from his desk and he snaps his fingers and he says, God, I'm good.
I haven't felt, God, I have to tell you, I do a lot of work for these episodes. I read a lot.
I see that.
I'm so sorry. This new book, I have not felt this excited. My heart race in a long time while reading.
I'm so glad to hear that. There's some advantages to having written this many books.
Mm-hmm.
I hope, which is that you kind of know how to do it.
Right.
And when and something about the shorter form is a kind of freedom. You don't have to take into account the architecture that a novel requires.
Mm-hmm.
You can just simply do a thing and then it's done.
Well, I'm hoping 9 years in of hosting the show, I know a little bit about how to do this. And I feel like the only way I could end this episode is to hold both the macro and the micro of your life, the two inextricably linked, as we've been talking about. Because, your wife, she's a poet, and in your book, Knife, you talk a lot about what she had to endure on the periphery because she did not dare show you what she had to hold. And I want to know, now that you two have returned to something like a normal life, how that period and its aftermath has affected and made this new chapter possible.
Well, one part of that is straightforward and honest to say that there was a long period of what we now call trauma. Both of us had, in our different ways, have had to wrestle with that.
Right.
With the help of therapists and so on. And that takes a long time, because this was a big event in anyone's life. But the other thing, I feel that something as explosive as this kind of bomb drops into the middle of a marriage.
Right.
It can destroy the marriage.
The shrapnel.
Yeah. I mean, maybe you don't come through it together.
Mm.
Or it bonds you forever. And it did that.
It's bonded you.
Yeah. And, she's got a memoir coming out, and I mean, most of it is not about me, but there is a bit about me in it.
Yeah. It comes out at the beginning of next year.
January. And so from that, you can get a sense of what it was like to be her.
Mm.
And yeah, we had to fight our way back through the debris.
How do you do that?
By being strong enough, I guess, by finding the strength. And you need help. You need help from family. You need help from friends. You need help from professionals. You need all of that. But then in the end, you have to find it in yourself. I mean, in the end, nobody can really do it for you. You have to do it for yourself. And I think both of us have. I think both of us feel at this point, which is slightly more than 3 years in, that the thing doesn't weigh on us in the way that it did. It's not that it's not there.
Right.
It'll always be there.
It's never not there.
It's never not there. That's why I use this term at the end of Knife. I talked about it being a wounded happiness. The wound is there, but so is the happiness.
And the wound of India?
Yeah. I mean, I really think it won't be healed until I go back again.
And can you?
We're going to find out. I certainly want to. There's no reason for me not to go except the whole security issue.
Mm-hmm.
So how we resolve that will determine whether I can go and on what terms and in what way.
Mm.
There's some places I want to go see. In the 11th Hour, the story called The Musician of Kahani, there's a moment in which I deliberately insert myself into the world of the book, because the world of the story is the world I've written about in the past. And I just thought, I just taking one more walk up that hill.
Mm-hmm. And you want to take?
I want to take one more walk up that hill, which is where I was born and raised.
In that story, The Musician of Kahani, I believe there's a line about how you need heartbreak.
Mm.
You need to have your heart stepped on and torn asunder in order for the music to sound.
Yeah, I think
good and lived.
If you've never been brokenhearted, you haven't lived. And these are very powerful experiences in any life. I actually would really, my ideal reader actually, however, is that Martian you mentioned. The person who comes to these books and knows nothing about me except the books.
Well, I am the opposite of that Martian. And so as we close, I want to go back to a piece you wrote in 1990. This is 1 year after the anniversary of the fatwa, where you once again do as you always have and return to the page. I thought we could read that.
I feel as if I've been plunged like Alice into the world beyond the looking glass, where nonsense is the only available sense. And I wonder if I'll ever be able to climb back through the mirror. Do I feel regret? Of course I do. Regret that such offense has been taken against my work when it was not intended, when dispute was intended, and dissent, and even at times satire and criticism of intolerance and the like, but not the thing of which I'm most often accused, not filth, not insult, not abuse. I regret that so many people who might have taken pleasure in finding their reality given pride of place in a novel will now not read it because of what they believe it to be, or will come to it with their minds already made up. And I feel sad to be so grievously separated from my community, from India, from everyday life, from the world. Please understand, however, I make no complaint. I am a writer. I do not accept my condition. I will strive to change it, but I inhabit it. I'm trying to learn from it. Our lives teach us who we are.
Do you remember writing that?
Yeah, and that was at a really bad. That was 1990 or so. It was on the one hand a very bad moment. On the other hand, what I had done, which I don't refer to in that essay, is I had written one of the most joyful books of my life, which was Haroun in the Sea of Stories.
For your son?
Which I wrote for my son, a book with a happy ending. I had become very interested in happy endings. So I thought I'd write one.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'd make it happen.
I'm a writer. I do not accept my condition. I will strive to change it, but I inhabit it. I'm trying to learn from it.
Mm-hmm.
Our lives teach us who we are.
Mm-hmm. I still think that. I mean, I'm happy to say that my condition is improved.
That's why I wanted to ask you, at this age, your life has taught you that you are what?
Well, those 23 books are the answer. That's me. If you want to know me, there's 23 books that'll tell you.
And the books, do they outlast the people who try to oppress them?
You know, literature is really powerful. I mean, put it like this. Many writers who were persecuted and even killed their work survived the thing that persecuted them.
Mm.
So, you know, Mandelstam, the poetry survives, the Soviet Union does not. Garcia Lorca, his poetry survives, the Falange does not. You know, even you go back, I'm very interested in the story of the poet Ovid, who upset Caesar Augustus. We don't even know exactly what it was that he did that Augustus disliked. But he was exiled. He was sent to this sort of dump on the shore of the Black Sea and was never allowed to come back to Rome. Wrote all these pleading letters to be allowed to come back to Rome, never allowed to, died out there. Well, we still have Ovid. We don't have the Roman Empire. Mm-hmm. So literature is very powerful and lasts. Writers, much weaker.
Do you see yourself in your work in that kind of historical trajectory?
Well, you know, if you're my kind of writer, you do write for posterity as well as for the present. You want your books to last. You know, you want to be able to leave behind that shelf of books.
Yeah.
And that people will still find it relevant. You know, I said, actually, one of the things, since we've been going back in time, I really like it that Midnight Children, which was a book I wrote when I started writing it, was about, I don't know, 1976 or something. So, you know, 50 years ago. And people still find things in it that speak to them. People who were not born when the book was published.
Well, I'll just say, I I was born in 1994. And to quote Knife, I believe that art is a waking dream, and that imagination can bridge the gulf between dreams and reality and allow us to understand the real in new ways by seeing it through the lens of the unreal. And I just want to thank you for having done that time and time again for me and my life, and I think many people listening.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
This was a thrill. Thank you for the time.
This was great.
Salman Rushdie.
Thank you so much.